Just thank you. We would run a poll shortly just to be able to tell the various sectors you're coming from. And so as we are talking, we'll be able to relate to your sector well and see how best we benefit from each other in this learning agenda. Of course, our session is about learning, and you know that is the theme for the RINGO processes. So please use your Mentimeter and kindly put in the codes, and let's see how many we have from the various sectors. We can see a number from the INGOs, the NGOs, philanthropy. Unfortunately, we are not seeing it around donors, but I'm positive as we feel this in, we will see that picture clearly. So let me mention swiftly that this session is specifically on the effective models around participatory grants making, why we set out as a team to learn through this, to prototype and to share our learning with the world. Later on in the conversation, one of the idea carriers will come in to give us the frame around this prototype. So I wouldn't want to take much from his field. Let me mention quickly that we have 2 idea carriers for our prototype. 2 very strong influencers in the area of grant making. Yes, and please keep introducing yourself in the chat, your name, your surname, your country, and we can appreciate you better. Yes, so we have 2 idea carriers for this prototype on participatory grant making model. One is by the name Malasa Mohammed Awol, who is currently with us in this session. He's a co-founder and executive director of NOSAC in Ghana. Of course, he's a force to reckon with in the sector of influencing change and dealing with varied ways of grant making model. Our other idea carrier is Charlotte Pinson. Unfortunately, she's not able to join us live in this session. She would be represented by Mamata Dash from Transform Trade itself. And both of them would make us appreciate the journey we traveled together in learning from different stakeholders at community level, sub-national level, and national level in both Ghana and Kenya around the most effective participatory grant making model to show to the world as part of the process of shifting power in the RINGO processes. If we could see the agenda slightly, just to be able to let our participants be able to appreciate how we will go through this together. So beyond these introductory sessions, we are going to have 5 minutes from one of the idea carriers. That's Malasa Mohammed Awol, who will give a framing and a rationale to the participatory grant making model. He will tell us what it's about, why we are talking about this in RINGO, and how it can enable power disruption. We'll have live community conversations. We have a video from one of our support team members. As part of the process of shifting power, we are changing language. Most people will talk about advisory boards. In this our process, we use what we call support groups across the 2 countries as we were learning through this in this prototype. So we'll have one of our support group members from Ghana to tell us his experience. It will be a video. Then we would have a community conversation with one of the beneficiaries of this process, who also happens to be a support group member and a farmer. And as we would, that would be two farmers, a male and a female. We would hear from them their experience, their thoughts on how they have experienced this prototype and some learning points to share with us. After that, we would have another presentation from our on some emerging principles we have documented from this prototype process. I'm sure a lot of people could be screaming in their mind, no more additional checklists, but of course, that's not going to be a checklist. It would be a few pointers that would be shared on things coming up from the community, subnational and national level in Ghana and Kenya, of things to be considering for a very effective participatory grants making model. Beyond that, we would also hear from Amata, who would let us appreciate how Transform Trade has experienced these prototype processes. Then we'll have 30 minutes. We have scheduled good 30 minutes to hear from you, because the purpose for us in this conversation is hearing more from you and your experiences and your feedbacks in the kind of information we've documented. But this is an ongoing model that we would love to have your feedback more. We'll have another session on Q&A, which Jim will facilitate for us, and we look forward to that session as well, to pick up your views and your opinions, your voices, your information to shape this process. So not to bore you much with my voice alone and my face alone, I would move swiftly to Mohammed Awol to give us the rationale, to frame this conversation in a way that our minds will be very well set to appreciate the content of the participatory grant making model we set out to prototype. Awol, if you are with me, kindly unmute and over to you. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Calceda, for setting the stage. I welcome all participants to this particular platform for defying time zone and making it to this platform. We are privileged to discuss with you how a team over a period of 18 months around that has been working to develop what we call participatory grant making model. We have gone as low as the community level. We have made some kind of moves to subnational level. We moved to national level. And of course, also got views and opinion from people like you across the globe. Why this particular exercise? Shifting power is what we have been talking about. But of course, we've all agreed that there are stuckness. There are issues that are keeping us at one place. One of those issues has to do with the way we make grants. Grant making has been seen to be the most powerful tool in determining relationships. And over the years, North-South have experienced these grant-making processes at different levels, and our experiences vary. Whereas most people from the South feel grant-making has been some kind of a bully. It has been some kind of dictatorial. It has been some kind of a master-servant relationship. The North sees it as an opportunity to empower people. This is an opportunity to get people to do what they are capable of doing. This is a kind of experience both sides talked about. We were convinced that it is critical to have a practical feel of what PGM does to the relationship between North and South, and what, of course, it can do in the global conversation of disrupting power. What is it that a PGM can do? we were also quite convinced that there are some number of models out there, but what kind of PGM can we have that can be disruptive to power and that influence our journey? So we decided to find out who has actually initiated this conversation at all. Is it another model of North to sort of grant resources to a certain organization, or it is an inclusive process that has its rules defined at both ends, but of course looking at a meeting point? So we decided to test the grounds to find out from the grassroots level what they knew about PGM, what they think about it, what would they want it to be. And that is where we've been able to come out with somewhat kind of characteristics that a PGM should have if it intends to disrupt power. So today, we are here to share our journey with you. It's been an interesting journey. The learning has been amazing, but of course, today is not going to be the terminal point of this journey. At the end of it, we seek to get your ideas. You may have some kind of differences in our thoughts, but we want to get your suggestions as to what we should do going forward to make sure that this PGM can really disrupt power and contribute to a balanced relationship between North and South. This journey could not have been successful if we hadn't moved with coaches like Rebecca, like Jim, like Janet. They have been instrumental in asking us the question, what if? From making sense, the inquiry processes, up to this point where we intend to embed this particular idea. We acknowledge them today. It is also important to acknowledge our country support groups from Kenya on in Ghana. They have been amazing. We talk about Nana Afazenu from Waxi, Star Ghana, Alaji Amidu Tanko, Osfam Country Director Hamza. We talk about Gifty from Crossroads. These are people who have come out to support this particular initiative. Our consultations have been broad, and I can assure you that what we intend to present here is actually views expressed by these diverse groups, and we can easily say it's an inclusive process. And if those of you here, and perhaps those who are yet to join us in implementing this kind of PGM, I can assure you that the kind of power balance we are talking about between the North and South will be realized within the shortest possible time. So again, at some point in this conversation, we will discuss with you some principles that we believe, if we adopt, can really make a PGM, that's participatory grant-making model, a very useful one, a very disruptive one, and has that kind of potential of creating a balanced society. Now, what are the people saying about PGM? They are talking about any process of giving resources, of giving grants, of working together that gives decision-making power to the South to decide on what we want to do, how we want to do it, and who else needs to come on board. Such a process they view as empowering. Such a process they see as a recognition of resources beyond just money. A major concern or worry expressed by the Southern organization has been this: that in partnership or in relationship that has been lived, what they have come to accept is that where the money comes from is where power or influence tilts towards. But they also believe that there are some resources that have not been discussed, that have not been talked about. And when we begin to build relationships that are grounded on mutual interest, on some kind of equality, then the resources at the other side would begin to be appreciated. And so partnership forged from this kind of thinking would be empowering and be mutually benefiting. That is the thinking of our Southern constituent when it comes to participatory grant making model. Thank you very much. This is just a way of opening the chapter. And I look forward to getting your inputs. I look forward to having what is it that we can tweak to make this kind of journey a successful one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Awal. That was really powerful. And I wrote down very specifically the thing about certain resources that are not recognized. And I'm sure it will come up more and more. If the tech team could help us, we'll have the video from Ghana, from one of the support group members who would be sharing his perspective or his experience in this process.
My name is Tijani Hamza, Oxfam Country Director in Ghana. Let me start by congratulating the RINGO team on the occasion of this learning festival. I am part of the group of people who are supporting NORSAC and Tradecraft in Kenya on the prototype related to participatory grant making model. The reason why I joined this group is because over the years, I do believe on the role of Southern leadership in development aid. I do think that there is a lot that organizations like international NGOs can do to support in shrinking, in dealing with issues around shifting the power. I also think that the whole issue around decolonizing aid is an imperative that we all have to deal with. Trying to see how we can enhance the role of our partners in the governance and accountability of the programming for which we work together. So based on that, I accompanied this process, and by accompaniment meant that I shared a lot of reflections based on practice, but I also participated in a lot of discussions in this process. And I did like the sort of discussions that we had with civil society partners in northern Ghana, but also in Accra. And the Accra meeting, I should say, there were some INGO members too present, where interesting revelations came regarding Southern partners' experiences, but also expectations of us as northern organizations or INGOs. And one thing that came, two main reflections was that the whole discussions around shifting the power. A discussion came around that we have to be, if we want to follow through the whole process of shifting power, we need to be sure that we shift power, and then there are people who are ready to take power. So more or less, you don't shift power into a vehicle. Another aspect of related to shifting the power was that there is a feeling that the debate and the discourse around shifting power is led by the same people who have been keeping the power, you understand me? So how do you create the room for Southern-led NGOs to be the ones who are actually taking leadership in the whole process around shifting power? There were also interesting areas that came related to how we see accountability, that there is increasingly the emphasis of accountability to be a learning opportunity, but also to see how we can reconstruct the society, but more on risk. Have you done this? Are you able to bend budgets? Are you able to respond to A, B, C, D? So a call for a discussion around how accountability can be meaningful both to the northern NGOs and then southern NGOs. And then another interesting aspect was that somebody said that sometimes northern INGOs behave as if the funds they are using are their own funds, you know what I mean? I mean that sometimes they are just fiduciary agents, and for that matter, they have to be careful. Sometimes the power they take as a result of this fiduciary responsibility. I'm looking forward to the discussions related to the PGM model in Ghana to see how lessons and the interactions from colleagues around can also make the project more practicable for us to see how we can implement on the ground, but also as levers to see how it can also enhance structural and systemic issues related to the relationship between northern NGOs and southern NGOs, especially focusing on a grant model that is participatory.
Thank you. Thank you, tech team, for that. I know a number of conversations have come up and people may have questions really in their mind. You can be sharing that ahead of the Q&A, and you can also note them down. And later on, we will have conversations around them. Now we're going to move to 2 community members in Kenya whom have been part of this process. The first to go to will be Margaret Wanda, who is a smallholder farmer from Nyeri County and also specialized in horticultural commercial farming. She's a youth, very vibrant, and a member of the Garandari Sawa community-based organization, where she's doing a lot of work and has experienced this PGM prototyping process. Margaret, if you are online with us, this is your space to share with us your experience in this process and your thoughts around how a PGM model can really be empowering, can be beneficial to both donors, NGOs, community-based organizations, and ultimately the beneficiaries to which we all represent. Margaret?
Hello, everyone. My name is Margaret from Kenya. I'll take you through my experience about the PGM. PGM, okay, in our community-based organization has been positively welcomed. The issue of shifting the power of the decision making to the people. That's how we take it. The PGM, we call it the shift the power to the community. It's simple from us to understand that way. This has made the small scale farmers or the business person in the CBO feel much appreciated and important. Members who happens to be small scale farmers and traders have been able to prioritize their needs and adjust their business plans and proposal accordingly. On this, organizations are able to agree on what will help the majority in terms of what comes first and what can wait. The whole process, convincing the idea of getting support, is complete as it is. It is original format from the organization group without any alternative at any particular stage. Shift the power to the people has also enabled the CBO to be accountable to their decision, since they have been given freedom to choose what they want, and they must own up every outcome of their business plan. As a point to note is that the various groups get to interact with our funding or our partners in easier way, whereby we connect when we are in meetings, we connect via video calling using WhatsApp platforms. Members are guided on how to structure their things that they want to know more about. So we, as the organizer, we tell them what to do. So it is easier to evidence, make sure that all members who are giving out suggestion and we are all in agreement as a whole. Also, members get feedback from our partners through phone calls as well during their meeting, making sure that everyone hears what is being said, so there is transparency in the way we handle our business. That is between the members, or rather the CBO and the partners. However, in the CBO I belong, we write minutes and pictures. We also take photos sent via WhatsApp to our partner to evidence various meetings we have as a group. And also to continuous progress reports are often prepared by the group members and sent to our partners. PGM journey in the support group on me, it creates of the support group to enact the PGM agenda has already created impact, not only to the various organizations, but also to the support group member, that's me. This has particularly established a platform whereby I'm able to identify and analyze the potential that I have to meet their hoods, to meet the considerate to the support of the funds. I also been tasked with the condition due to due diligence and fact finding, as well as the correction firsthand information from the target group, thereby coming up with the recommendation on the highlights area or areas to improve. My view and feelings is that the support group is represented the interest of the farmer, because it's draw from various organizations such as small-scale farmers, traders, organizations, thereby bringing in hand experience of what the farmer or the trade want and their challenges. As a support group member, we emphasize what the farmer or the trader have proposed and propel it in the next level. The link between the group and the project sponsor has been shortened and brought closer to the people. That's what I feel about the PGM.
Mm-hmm.
I have also learned lessons. Just a minute. I have learned that there is transparency when doing things. The PGM journey has nevertheless come with its own share of lessons. Among them are the following. On one part of group, they have been guided on a format of writing on point proposal, therefore being able to structure business plan that suit the needs of the people. Group have also learned how to participate transparency in their house matters. Due diligence has to be conducted by members of the support group, hence a lesson to always uphold their intelligence as well as inclusivity of all the groups. I think that's all I have for today.
Great, great, great. Thank you so much, Margaret. That was very good. And thank you for your time. Your talks around choices, discussion, representation, and even that personal impact on you, that was really strong. Just to let our participants appreciate that Margaret, initially, Margaret was going to speak in Swahili, and she said that the personal impact she's getting, she feels confident to speak in English. And that was really strong. Thank you, Margaret. Now we move over to Benjamin Maundi, who is also a farmer and a rep of the support group in Kenya. Benjamin, are you online with us to share your perspective as well? And if you don't mind, if you could make it a bit more shorter, then maybe at Q&A, we could call on you again. Time seems not to be on our working well with us. Benjamin?
Yes, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, I have a challenge with my video on, so I'll probably keep trying to come on, but I can. If you allow me, I'll participate by just voice on its own.
Yes, that's okay with us. Please go on.
Okay, so I just briefly be happy to share my experience. Like you said, I am a farmer representative. I'm a member of a federation of farmers in a county in Kenya. The county is called Kitui in Kenya. I would say my expression and my understanding of the PGM is that it has been a very interesting journey so far. As a member of a support group, I have an opportunity to, first of all, learn a lot quite so far. The interesting thing is that now I've been able to sit on the other side of the table because previously my participation in grant making has been one of writing proposals, and then waiting for the proposal to be assessed, and then we are given feedback. So this time I'm having a chance to sit on that table where those decisions and processes are designed and the decisions made. So for me, it's a very interesting opportunity. The other thing, out of sitting on that table, I would say I've learned a few things, or I've had a chance to learn how the process works. I've had the opportunity to participate in the process, making of the process. I've also had the opportunity to participate in designing parameters that we would use to assess or to gauge the community groups that work with. And that was done during our co-creation workshop, which we held some time back. So that gave me an opportunity to give my input as a farmer representative and put in the perspective of a farmer on that decision of designing the process, which I felt confident the farmer is easier able to interpret the outcome of that process, and when it is communicated to them in a language that they're able to understand. I've also had the opportunity to participate in proposing the groups, community groups to work with. Out of my network of interacting with farmers before the support group was formed, I had a network of course, being a representative of farmers. I've had the opportunity to network, interact with farmers. So when this opportunity to propose some groups came up, I was able to put forward some names, farmer groups and community farmer groups that are in the process of being assessed jointly to see whether they fit into what a PGM process could be. My other intake, again, what I take out of this process again is PGM is a process that is inclusive, and that has been well demonstrated. First-hand experience on that demonstration, because even during our meeting as support group members, we have a very participatory way of meeting where we have a chance to put forward our opinions, decisions, and it is very important for us as I would say, if I have to speak as a farmer representative, to be involved in that process, creating even that process of how the grant will roll out, right? So I felt that was a critical part to be involved in, and now I have gotten insights into the process of grant making, and then I'm also happy because I'm also able to continuously put in on that table, put in the perspective of a farmer. I think which my understanding of participatory grant making is that you involve both sides, those who are to, I mean, by involving all the stakeholders, that makes it more inclusive. So I also feel that the PGM process will, so far, the far we've gone is continuing to enable the community to be clear on the expectations, because every time we move a step, and obviously continuously involving the other stakeholders in the community, the ultimate product is going to be one that is very inclusive, that has included those communities from the word go. So they are more likely to probably buy into the results or own up the results of whatever comes out of this process.
Great. Thank you so much, Benjamin. Very great. Having experienced a different table from where you used to be, that is quite rich to share. Now, you will notice that we've heard from two levels of community people. One at an Oxfam country director who gave us a perspective based on his rich wealth of knowledge in grant making process, and now community members as beneficiaries who have been in these processes. We will then fund this up with a presentation from Awol to give us a pointer into what is coming up from these engagements in terms of principles and key things that should be looked out for us to have that participatory grant making model be defined in the beginning. Please, if we could have the slides to facilitate our conversation. Thank you.
Yes, can you move to principles? Yes. Go ahead. Okay, thank you very much. We've listened to Margaret and Benjamin. And if you listen to them critically, you're likely to draw a conclusion that even at the community level, the groups that exist at that level know that they are supposed to have a system that should make it possible for them to be accountable. That is supposed to make them and all their activities transparent. So they are actually looking for, they know of these values. On the other hand, same values have kept partners from the North so much afraid that if they allow the South to lead some of these discussions, they will not be accountable. They will not be transparent. What they have just told us contradicts this position. Margaret made it clear that in terms of ownership, they feel this is ours. We are supposed to protect it. This is something that we have come out with. We are supposed to engage others. That is the feeling they have. And Ben was quite straightforward when he said, sitting at the other side, he now has a different experience. It tells us that those of us who have lived this experience from the South, we have one side of an experience that we receive instructions, we wait for the templates to be developed, we wait for some kind of system to be told to us how we can use those systems to show the kind of results they want. And sometimes it's interesting. How can someone be, say, from the North and tells you the kind of results you should pick from your community? So what if we allow the people to sort of lead that process to coming out with what kind of results do we want to see? What kind of change will impact on them sustainably? I think these are some kind of reflections we bring to this. Honesty and ethics is just one of several principles that we have weaved together in our journey. And we see honesty and ethics as one principle that normally we see it to always come out from the South, a one-sided demand. In our journey, people feel, no, it shouldn't be. It should be at both ends. If the South and North want to meet, then that kind of fear for risk, that certain group of people are not honest enough, and so they aren't able to manage resources without being dictated to, it's not right, it's inaccurate. They have communicated to that clearly. But then what is also important is that they believe that INGOs, and for that matter, Northern organizations, are unable and have difficulty in living their values and principles. Sometimes they express their values clearly to them, they accept those values, but later on realize that these are not the values that their partners from the North, intend or espouse. So that can be challenging. And that is the kind of thinking they have. But then they also believe that given an opportunity to come out with, to live some of these values, they have a way of defining them. They have a way of relating with these values that can bring some kind of mutual benefit to counterparts from the North. Again, one principle that was largely talked about in this journey has to do with the African identity. Of course, this particular prototype is from Kenya and Ghana. But then there was that kind of fear in generalizing that this thing can work across global South. So we had that temptation of limiting ourselves to the African identity, saying that how can relationship be built having this kind of the pluralism within the African context, and that there's a need to respect this diversity. There's a need to create that kind of dialogue, that kind of spaces for them to use experiences from their daily interactions to relate and work with other partners from the North. So they think that a PGM that can really work to disrupt power should have that kind of African identity because of issues of ownership, because of sustainability, because of what? That kind of pride that this thing is coming from us and that it is inherent and not influenced externally. Talking about openness and principle, you may say this is not a new principle, But the interest here is how it was expressed in our journey. How open are we to each other? To what extent can we move openness to another level? And do not see openness as just looking at how much we have spent and how much is with us. Where are we at this particular point talking about timelines? What if we open it up and agree with the Sardine organizations to lead on what is it that has to be shown? How can we show almost everything that we do for others to see? What kind of platform are we going to use to showcase changes, processes, and systems that we are putting in place? This was the kind of openness and transparency that they discussed. The feeling is that the kind of principle under the transparency and openness we see today is something that is some kind of push on the South. So this is how we see openness and transparency. You should be able to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. So they respond to them, not naturally, but because it's a requirement they have to meet to have the resources. Let's move to the next principle. Yes. And now we're looking at solidarity, inclusion, and non-discrimination. You see that this particular picture tells the kind of organizations we engage at national level. But solidarity should not just be for the beneficiaries. How do we create a single community? And that is where we think of the North and South meeting, that we are looking at who is left out in this whole processes, from our governance level, operational level, community level. Who is left out? Why should we wait until we're talking about results that we think of some other people? Should we not involve them from the onset? And that is where they think solidarity should just be on these issues affect all of us, and it's not a sudden issue. If we express that very well, then the issue of solidarity will be well expressed from the context of the South. And same as non-discrimination. Of course, discrimination is done at different levels, even subnational and community level. How can we be conscious about this when we are testing grant-making models that is inclusive? It recognizes strength in diversity. It recognizes the differences we have in our society, and that we are all able to bring that together and have a very good representative kind of system that helps us manage this kind of resources. Of course, they do no harm and safeguard the communities we support. Protecting our communities, very, very key. And here, I was so excited listening to conversation across different levels, talking about inclusion, talking about the very poor, talking about, again, the diversity, and that how can we be conscious in our prototyping process, protect these people and make sure that they are all part of the journey. And then I think our last principle, which is talking about, what is it? Our last principle, talking about co-creation. I think this is one of the principles I love so much. Talking about co-creation. The argument has been, why not work towards developing relationships and build partnership ahead of projects? should we not focus on building relationship, building partnership, and projects will then be some kind of results, output from our partnership, our relationship. We should co-create. One should not develop the theory of change elsewhere, submit, and just inviting the other to use that theory of change to make change at the local level. Of course, our stories. How do we tell the stories and get the communities to appreciate that things that have come to them have been communicated effectively to them? For now, they feel that results they produce are to be communicated to people from the north because that is where the resources come from. And I think we need to be conscious about this when we are developing participatory grant-making model, because that is one of the effective ways that power can be disrupted. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all for the detailed explanation of the principles, particularly the last one on telling stories with dignity. Now, we are moving over to Mamata Dash to share with us the experience of transformed trade in this process of prototyping. Kindly note that tradecraft has been changed, the name of tradecraft has been changed into transforming trade. And I know that for some it will still be new, but it's fair to mention that again. And please, like you mentioned in the chat box, if you have questions, you have comments to make, please put it in. And we would take it up at the Q&A session. Mamata Dash, if you are with us, please let's have your presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Gabasoda, and thank you, Aval, for that powerful sharing. I hope everyone is able to hear me. I am Mamta here from Transform Trade. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, but it is good evening for me. I'm speaking to all of you from Delhi in India, and it's about 9:40 p.m. in the night. Yeah. So after listening to our friends and colleagues in this exercise and this experiment and working together, I wanted to go across to all of you to share some of our learnings, unlearnings, and what are the things that we attempt to do in the next few months and years to come. But before that, I just wanted to say that I'm pitching in for Charlotte, our CEO, who was supposed to have been talking in this space, not me. And I just hope that I'll be able to do justice to what she could have, the energy and the insights that she could have brought to this space and have the conversation with you all. So pardon me if I'm not able to transfer the actual energy that she could have brought to all of you in this process. Can we have the first slide, the slide number 12 up, Tao, please? As the slides are coming up, I just wanted to share also that as an organization and Transform Trade, about 2 years back, we made a commitment to shift our work and focus on community-led processes. And I must say that it has been a journey of transformation around various things, around understanding what it means to us as an INGO. As many of you know, we are an international organization working with farmers, producers, artisans in the areas of agriculture, tea, and garment. And so for us, it was a kind of a sit back and really reflect and churn out our own thinking about, yes, the commitment is community-led, and yes, we want to change turn the table around, but what it really means to us definitely took a lot of time for internal churning, for internal reflection, and feel confident to be taking such a decision as an organization. And that was also a time when the entire world was ravaged with pandemic, and the entire world was seeing the fault lines of various kinds of inequalities and systemic failure. So that was a pretty much a wake-up call for us. And we started that journey as an organization to shift the power. And then we have been part of this RINGO, prototyping of experimenting what participatory grant making really means and what it should look like, what it should feel like and all. And it's been a journey of great learning, great learning, I would also say. So we have been piloting the participatory grant making work in Kenya, and at the core of it is to seek disrupting power. And when we say disrupting power, the power that we hold as an INGO, the power that needs to be definitely changed and shared. So that's how we started off, and we have been kind of learning as we are going. And every step has been a step of checking our assumptions, checking our concepts. And as you can see in the slides, it's been, as I've been speaking, it's been a real check on our own mindset. It's about changing our own thinking, changing the way we as an INGO have been working and translating that into something which we want to see, and really creating mechanisms, creating processes, and putting ourselves in the line of fire, if I can use that term, to be challenged and to be really checked and to be told that no, this is not the way to go, and this the other way, better way. So as a matter of a journey and the process of journey, what we have learned is that it is important to build and have absolute trust and faith and power in people's collective agency. And that's how we have created, we have gone ahead and created together the support group. And you heard from both Margaret and Benjamin, they are part of our valuable support group members. And the support group comprises of colleagues and friends and farmers from diversity of groups. So they are partners. They all work in subnational and national levels. And the process of setting these mechanisms have taken us time. And at the core of it, when we were going ahead with this kind of an idea, we also challenged about, what should be the different way, how should the grant making look differently, not for us, for everybody. And I don't want to get into the details about how and what of it, because you have already heard from Margaret and Benjamin. Leadership and decision making is at the heart of whatever is being done. So who is taking the decision? Who is leading this process? And it is the support group, which is comprised of diversity of actors, including Transform Trade colleagues. But Transform Trade colleagues, we are part of that group, not the holding that or deciding things. So the decisions such as how an application can be generated. There's no template provided from our end. I'm giving a few examples, specific example on that. How should we, decide what could be the size of the grant that can be, given? These are decisions that the support group has to take, because they are best placed. They're grounded. They're in the direct connection with the communities and people. So we are making those practical challenges. We are also challenging our whole notion of monitoring and evaluation. And in the beginning of this conversation today, we did talk about decolonizing our own language. So we are saying that whatever needs to be told, at the core of it has to be, why is it needed to be told? Who needs to say it? How that needs to be told must be decided by the people who are driving the change. So they are actually at the driver's seat of the change process. Can we go to the next slide, please? I'm trying to be quick. There's so much that we have been, able to do in this last few months. And I know it's not justice, but I want to give ourselves enough time for discussion. So as you must have already figured out and also heard from my previous speakers, our learnings have been interwoven into what we are learning. Yeah, and when I look at the two sides of what we were doing and what is it that we do not need to do, is the way we were doing grant making. Not to say that the earlier way of doing it was wrong. We have done tremendous amount of work with donor money, and it has really impacted people's lives more very, very practically across geographies. But when you're saying that we are committed to people-led processes, that essentially means that we need to seed power. As an INGO, we need to seed power. And that's been a very, very key unlearning that we are doing. It's also a learning, but an unlearning. Both Margaret and Benjamin alluded to the power of listening to people, going with what people are prioritizing, not making assumptions. On the other side, we are also checking and challenging our own assumptions, and there are several of that, and we are in that journey. We haven't finished that journey. In fact, we have just begun that journey. So it has to come as we go. It's like learning by doing. Then I did touch upon shifting mindsets and systems. The point is, we want systemic change to happen. One of the reasons why I wanted to move to community-led processes is that systems are broken, and systems need to be fixed. And the communities are at the right place with right agency, with right power. They can shift that with support, with walking together, making that journey together. So shifting our own mindset and systems are as powerful, as required, as necessary, as also being mindful of that we are not working in isolation. We are working within the larger ecosystem of development sector. And the development sector has been working in a particular way. There are different ways, but there's a pattern. And the communities have also a perception about organizations coming to their areas. So there's an learning also happening there. So as I said, this is a collective journey we have embarked on together, and we would like as many people, as many minds and hands and energy to come together and work and learn together. Can we go to the next slide? And this will be my last slide, and I promise to be very short on this. So what's next? I have already talked about this. We are learning by doing. Every step has been a learning. If I just have to give an example of the term support group, that if I can count it, that is the 9th expression where we felt we are getting it right now. We started with something like advisory group, and at every step we were challenging power within ourselves. Who is an advisor and who is an advisee? Who is a facilitator, who is a facilitatee? So support group is something that has come up as a collective journey of learning, collective journey of understanding as how power can be disrupted. Yeah? And that's just one example. There are several of them. And we are aiming to have a very critical reflection early next year together. As I said, this is a journey as Transform Trade we have embarked on. This is a commitment, organizational commitment. We will be on this journey going forward and testing and trying and sharpening it. We are also keen that we are able to tell or facilitate the stories of the people, of the change process be told in a way which will inspire, which will also bring together a diverse set of people and partners on board. Because this is a journey that cannot be done in isolation, and we need diversity of people working in different spaces, be it resource people, resource organization, be it philanthropic organization, be it research organization, be it community development organization. We need more and more minds to come together and work together. And the idea is that how do we examine and ensure that we are able to embed our learning, as much as possible, as effectively and efficiently as possible, and scale it with all of you together. And I'm sure that in the question and answer segment, we'll have a few more questions, which might also help us to describe or share more about what's next. I think I'll stop here, and thank you so much for listening in.
Thank you. Thank you a lot, Mamata. That was really very rich. And in the interest of embedding learning, there's a question in the chat box, which I'm sure that the Q&A session will take on board. At this moment, let me thank Margaret and Benjamin and Awal and Mamata for such great presentation, of course. And thanks to myself. I would hand over now to Jim to facilitate the Q&A session. Jim, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kausada. Very wonderful. Just very happy to queue in after you. And thank you so much, Mamata, Mohammed, Rebecca, and Benjamin. Rebecca, you know, you had a very thrilling presentation and everyone was applauding you. You know, you highlighted elements on transparency that was quite key to your work. And you know, Mohammed, you said something very interesting, you know, build partnerships, let the product let projects be a product of partnerships, you know, which was quite inspiring. And, you know, we are just taking the questions, so colleagues, if you have questions, just drop them in the chat. We already have one from Frank, you know, but before I take your question, Frank, I think there is this appreciation from Eliza Lopez. Thank you for sharing, Margaret. Great to hear about dynamic accountability practices being carried out in Kenya. So inspiring for all other actors in the development sector to follow by your example. Thank you so much for sharing that inspiring, you know, example. Now, Frank van der Most has a question for you, Mamata. And there are actually two questions. Permit me to just read them and you can take them. And colleagues, if there are any other questions, let us do well to drop them in the chat so that we can, you know, ensure that at the time we have accommodates, you know, the questions we are raising. Mamata, what motivated Transform Trade to embrace PGM? What caused the change to relinquish some of your power as a grant maker? That's the first question. Maybe you can respond to that before we take the second, if you don't mind.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you, Frank. Good to see you here. And first question is, as I was saying, and as we heard from everybody else in the session, we have been interrogating the whole principles of shift the power. And within that, we saw that participatory grant making as an INGO, which has been working traditionally and pretty effectively also, as I said, with donor support to change. So it sits within that shift the power framework. And what motivated us to change or to embrace PGM is we were really interrogating as an organization about what is the impact we want to see? Where should the impact be? And who should decide that what that impact should look like? And what is it that we can do as an INGO? What should be our role? Should our role be just an intermediary, or we need to play a bigger role? And we have been playing a larger role also as an influencing entity at the UK level. But as an organization, there was a reflection around we need to also look at our changing roles, considering that things have changed so much in the last few years, and the development sector is also interrogating and changing itself. So at the core of it was really to be able to meaningfully work to see the systemic impact or the change happening, sustainable and systemic impact on people's lives. So to have the impact being sustainable and systemic, we did not have any other way but to say that we need to change our gear. And that was the core motivation. We definitely need to address the inequalities and the exclusion, but that has to be a decision that the people need to find. They're finding solutions. How as an INGO we can facilitate that process, be part of that journey of finding solutions together. And what caused the change to relinquish some of your power as a grant maker? It's part of that continuum. It's part of that journey. And I would say that we are still in the learning phase. We are still in the beginning. And I would be wrong by saying that we have relinquished all power, but it's about sharing power. We do recognize that as an INGO, it is also useful to retain some power. And what that power should look like, what is it that we should be retaining to be able to push that systemic change, push that, the changes that the communities want to see and driving, and all that has to be decided by people together. So I think at the heart of it is a very deep sense of courage, and I'm saying it because I know what it takes, and a deep sense of commitment and confidence that this is the way to go, and we are ready to be facing that challenge, ready to be challenged, ready to be also challenging our assumptions as we go.
Okay, maybe I can just also add, this is Janet from Transform Trade in Kenya. I've been part of the PGM process, but just to emphasize on what Mamta said regarding what motivated us on areas of sustainability, just to say that we also evaluated the work that we have done for over 20 years in development field, working with different communities. And one of the challenge we were facing is sustainability. As soon as perhaps you end an intervention, then the community may drop it all and continue referring to Transform Trade interventions or projects. So we were looking at how can we enhance ownership by those we support. Yeah, so it's, as you're saying, we are piloting whether this process will enhance ownership. And looking at what Margaret did mention, there is that element of ownership, having co-created the interventions together, that is already coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Just sorry to say, I forgot to mention that I am joined by my colleagues Janet and Alice on this call, so we could respond to more questions together. Thank you, Janet, for that intervention.
Up to Jim.
I think Jim may have dropped. His internet may have challenged him. I'm not seeing him in the participant list as of now. There are other questions I would attempt. Let me read it out. And I'm sure a lot of us have also seen some of those questions. There's a question. Great. Yes, there's a question on just after the question was Frank. Okay, but how do we convince other grant makers in the North to make the same change? Of course, this is a progressive process. How do we convince other grant partners in the North to make the similar shift and changes that we are experiencing and calling for in the participatory grant making model? Now, the other question is, are you asking, okay, so there was a question on how is the response from national government? Then a clarifying question followed, and it says that my question relates to our small INGO working with small rural partners in Tanzania. We provide hand tools and sewing machines to artisans and work with a vocational college where we fund training. We want our friends and partners to be more prescriptive about their needs, but they are reluctant. How can we encourage them to be more courageous and confident when discussing their needs or wants? So this question is in line with the fact that if we want to give that leadership role to beneficiaries of our program and they are reluctant, how do we get them? How do we encourage them? How do we let them appreciate the need to consolidate power at their end and lead the conversation? So 2 questions there. How do we get grant makers in the North to also take this journey? And how do we get beneficiaries of aid from the South to have the courage to initiate and lead these processes. Awol, you want to take that? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important that we really have a number of northern seers who's adapting participatory grant making model. But the first thing that we need to do if we want to go into this particular area is to commit ourselves to learning and unlearning. It's been a journey, and there must be some kind of critical questions that we need to ask ourselves. And of course, in doing so, it will also be important to have critical friends with us in this journey, asking us those questions that we may not be willing, we may not be happy about, but that if we give time to those questions, it will deepen our reflection processes. Of course, northern organizations are used to, or they've taken decisions for a very long time. It's become part of their processes. It becomes part of the way they operate. So when it comes to decision making, these are areas that we are so comfortable about, and then we want to stick to that. We need to find how do we reduce this and sort of bring other people on board so that our decision making process become more inclusive than before. So that is one key thing that we need to look at. Again, we just have to have our eyes on the final product and ask ourselves who has that kind of capacity to give us that product. So if they, and what I mean is that I'm actually talking about the change here. What kind of change do we want? What is that desired change? And how do we get northern organizations to know that the change can only be realized if the North and South talk? If they increase, a platform for conversation. I think these are some of the things that they need to do if they want to really adapt PGM. Again, we should also know that PGM is not just one concept that we should just adapt. We can't jump into it. It should be a process. We need to try it. Contexts differ, and we can't just look at the Ghana experience, pull it to Tanzania. It may not work that way. So what is important here is that we pilot this and shift from making them projects. And that's why I prefer prototyping to just going for that kind of projectization. And we need to also be slow in adapting this. And then also talking about how we can get our beneficiaries in Tanzania to be more responsive and owning the process. I think we need to look at our engagement process again. At what point did we take the decision to be giving them equipment, to be giving them sewing machine? How inclusive was that process? What kind of priorities did they come out with? And how was the chosen one done? Was it in support of the people? And again, did you give them what you have, or you actually gave them what they were looking for? So these are two different things. If you are giving them what you have, you may be assured that what you have may not go down well with them. And so they may not show interest in that. But there's a way you can even work with them to give them what you have. And that is adapting a participatory way of identifying the need and solving the need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Jim, you are back. Thank you.
Yes, sorry about that. Thank you very much, Kawasuda and Mohammed for that wonderful response. They are very rich, questions, coming up. Prime Rose from Restless Development is asking about the role of youth movements. And with your permission, because we are wrapping up the session, we just have a few questions, to take on the Mentimeter, but it's good to highlight these questions because the group, I want to believe, will continue building on the reflections from, this session, to ensure that, you sharpen this initiative and really have something that we can make use of moving forward. So Prime Rose is asking, about the role of youth movements and collectives in power shifting and PGM. And she has actually shared a LinkedIn account that you can connect with her, to see how you can network in this regard. Tara Rao, how much of existing PGM practices, models helping, influencing your prototyping process? I'm sure she wants to find out, how much you're learning from the environment vis-a-vis PGM, and how that is equally influencing your work. And Rebecca, clarified that the big question, in my opinion, is about convincing other donors and INGOs to jump into this approach. And colleagues from Transform Trade and all of us here, I think that's really a clarion call for us to invite them to really jump onto this model. Vanessa is sharing, Vanessa Herringshaw, she says, this has been such a rich discussion. Here at ADD International, we are on a transformation journey to participatory grant making led by persons with disabilities. Sadly, I need to go now, but I look forward to many more fruitful exchanges. Thank you very much, Vanessa, for highlighting your work in that regard. We also have, okay, the discussions are really going on clearly, and thank you, Mamata and Mohammed, for interacting in the chat and providing responses to some of these brilliant questions. We will just take a couple of questions. Tech team, can you just help us as we wrap up this session, just to appreciate how what we've grasped. There is a Mentimeter link that has been shared in the chat. I kindly invite us all to click on it and take a few questions that are here for us. The third, fourth, and fifth questions, please. The first question, great. To what extent will your organization adopt PGM as a way of working? And we can see, the responses have started coming in. Great, to a very high extent, Not so sure yet. I like that. Six of us are, thinking about that. Not a very high extent at all. That's interesting to know. To a very high extent. Yeah, not so sure yet. Great. I like that. Good. To a very high extent. Thank you very much for sharing your responses in that regard. The next question, please. To what extent will your organization continue to use PGM as a way of working? We can take 1 minute. To a very high extent, not so sure yet. To a very high extent. Great, I like that, Mamata. Yes, this quick reflection certainly indicates that we need to continue to engage. That is very, very true. We can see the responses are, between many of us, looking forward to continue using PGM as a way of working, while some of us are not so sure yet. We need to take, this is from Alice, we need to take a strengths-based approach in our engagement with our partners. Lovely. Thank you very much, Alice, for that brilliant submission. And the last question, please. What will you do differently to ensure that PGM works for your organization? What will you do differently to ensure that PGM works best for your organization? Any thoughts on that? As the responses do come in, we are going to see them popping up on the screen. I'm sure we are typing. Thank you for your brilliant contributions to this. Great. Mobilize more CSOs and organizations around the concept. That strengthens or builds on Alice's point on continue the engagement. Make sure we carry out horizontal dialogue, meaningful engagement, find ways to communicate, find ways of communicating in more effective ways. persevere as this journey takes time. Thank you for that encouragement. Patience and huge amount of trust and respect. Recognize different powers. Finding the staff that wants to work, and I like the word want is in capital letters, want to work like this and making resources available to them. Become a member of this community. And there's a response in the chat, shifting accountability to people we work with and readiness to challenge constantly. Thank you very much for that. Understand, recognize different powers, understand the application of PGM in the context of our work. Thank you all for these very enlightening perspectives that we are sharing. They've really been quite truly engaging, inspiring, and encouraging. And I'm sure, you know, for those of us who are still contemplating on whether or not to take up PGM as a way of working, I'm sure some of these responses will inspire us on the way to go. Maybe recognizing the different powers, engaging more with different stakeholders to understand when the time is ripe for us to take up PGM as a way of working. On that note, colleagues, and with your permit, I can see here, talk, and talk. Keep talking about PGM, what you don't know, what you need to know, what you want to learn about PGM, as the journey is a very long one. I think that was a clarion call from Mohammed, you know, and Mamata said, you know, Transform Trade is still in the learning journey. So it's really a process, you know, that we can all learn from the great work that we've learned from the experiences of NOSA and Transform Trade. Thank you very much, colleagues, for your time. Thank you, the tech team, for this. We will be having a session right away, the closing for day one, and we kindly invite you to join that, and let's consolidate all these learnings. And of course, this is not the end. It's just the first day of 4 days, 3 more days to go. And I'm sure there is really going to be that conversation that will continue. Thank you all to Ali's, you know, colleagues who shared these insights to all of us. We look forward to joining you in the closing session, and why not in the future sessions. Thank you very much and have a good evening. Bye for now.
Bye.
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 Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
It's funny how Google has been